Something is happening all around us that most people sense but few name directly. We're drifting towards the lowest allowable standard in almost everything we do. This isn't happening through spectacular failures that make headlines. It's happening through countless small erosions that accumulate quietly until mediocrity becomes what we expect. I see it in healthcare constantly. Customer service, fast food, every institution has confused layers of administration with actual quality. In hospitals, it shows up in the simplest and most dangerous way. People do exactly what the metric requires and nothing more. Once the system defines a minimum threshold, notify the MD within 30 minutes, complete the handoff checklist, document this box. That bare minimum becomes the default. The floor becomes the ceiling. Complex systems pull people towards a path of least resistance. Once you set the minimum, the entire culture orients around it. People haven't stopped caring. The system has just made compliance easier than competence, efficiency more measurable than actual excellence, and appearance more visible than substance. This is Goodhart's law playing out in real time. When a measure becomes a target, it stops being a good measure. Once everyone optimizes for the metric instead of the mission, quality collapses in slow motion. If more regulation, more committees, more dashboards, and more administrators actually improved outcomes, healthcare would be near perfect by now. Instead, we keep adding oversight structures while frontline quality stagnates or declines. This is the administrative paradox. The more layers you add, the more disconnected the system becomes from the actual work. Hospitals now have entire ecosystems of committees staffed with people who never touch a patient. They generate policies, initiatives, and action plans that arrive in long emails nobody has time to read. And then they congratulate themselves and pat themselves on the back for promoting safety. Meanwhile, the nurses and physicians run at maximum capacity, trying to keep patients alive while complying with dozens of unnecessary documentation steps designed to protect the institution rather than the patient. Some actually launch their own quality improvement initiatives. The TMI curriculum addresses this extensively: administrative burden, credentialing complexity, payer friction, and the proliferation of tasks that add zero clinical value. The paperwork expands, the requirements multiply, the committees grow, and yet the actual bedside work, the communication, the judgment, the urgency becomes harder to execute because cognitive bandwidth is being drained away. Administrative growth outpaces frontline growth because it's easier and cheaper to create a new committee than to hire a competent nurse. Easier to create a new policy than to redesign a system. Easier to add a metric than to improve a workflow. Each additional layer diffuses responsibility. When responsibility is diffused, ownership disappears. Nobody owns outcomes, but everybody owns the paperwork. There's this narrative going around that people don't want to work anymore, that younger generations lack discipline, that nobody takes pride in their job. That narrative falls apart when you look at actual economic reality. People aren't working less because they're lazy. They're working differently because the system no longer rewards going above and beyond. Work ethic hasn't evaporated. It's been strategically redirected towards environments where people aren't punished for caring. When you're underpaid, overburdened, and asked to fill out more forms than a mortgage application, you stop offering discretionary effort. You stop volunteering extra bandwidth. You stop performing work the institution refuses to value. The scripts on work ethic in generations and the manufactured physician crisis outline exactly this shift. We're looking at rational self-preservation, not moral decline. When previous generations say, we worked 80 to 100 hours a week without complaining, what that means is we worked in a different economic era where the return on investment for extra effort actually existed. Today's workforce faces higher cost of living, collapsing home affordability, stagnant wages, student debt, childcare crisis, and an unstable employment landscape. On top of that, they're being asked to carry administrative loads that used to be distributed across departments. Of course they draw boundaries. Of course they refuse to murder themselves. Of course they resist becoming the institution's unpaid shock absorber. Work ethic isn't dead. It's going to places that reciprocate. Standards fall because modern systems demand more cognitive overhead than any human can sustain without error. The enemy isn't apathy, it's overload. Think about the modern physician. Because you even see a patient, you navigate to ease your inbox, notifications, credentialing emails, QI reports, staffing updates, new policies, care pathways, insurance requirements, mandatory training modules, CME certifications, scheduling changes, and administrative tasks that somehow land in your lap despite 3 layers of management above you. By the time you reach the patient, you've already used half your cognitive bandwidth. The system still expects flawless performance. Cognitive overload inevitably produces minimum standard behavior. People automate everything they can because the human brain protects itself. You stop going above and beyond because you literally don't have the mental energy left to do so. This is where craftsmanship dies. Craftsmanship requires space. It requires attention. It requires the freedom to think, anticipate, and refine. You cannot produce high-quality work in a system that treats you like a machine. When workers, whether in medicine, hospitality, fast food, or retail, are cognitively saturated, they regress to the safest, simplest pattern. Do exactly what I need to do so I don't get in trouble. That's neurological triage, not cultural decay. Want to see how deeply the following standard has infiltrated society? Try resolving a billing error with a major company, or ordering something online and attempting to return it, or navigating a phone tree where the AI insists it can help you, but clearly cannot understand your question from the get-go. AI isn't being used to improve service, it's being deployed as a moat to keep customers from reaching a human. Companies have discovered that if they raise the friction high enough, most people will give up. The standard isn't provide excellent service, make it just tolerable enough that customers don't leave. This thinking has infected every service industry. Wrong food orders, broken systems, disinterested staff, multi-step automated menus, no accountability, no ownership, no urgency. Because consumers adapt and tolerate the lowest lowered standard, corporations keep lowering it further. The frightening part is that healthcare is absorbing this mindset. Telemedicine call centers, automated scheduling, messaging trees, low-touch care delivery, staff so overloaded or undertrained that every patient becomes a checkbox instead of a human being. Once society normalizes mediocrity at scale, and industries with no margin for error, like medicine, start to mirror consumer culture. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The following standard isn't happening randomly. It's being engineered, unintentionally but structurally, by systems that reward efficiency metrics, cost savings, and an administrative expansion while punishing the actual labor that keeps institutions functioning. People don't wake up wanting to do poor quality work. They wake up in systems where excellence is exhausting, unrewarded, and often punished with more responsibility. The formula is consistent across industries. More administration, plus more complexity, plus more metrics, plus more burnout, plus less autonomy equals lower standards. Until institutions redesign their incentives, they will continue attracting and producing behavior that matches the minimum requirement. Not because humans are declining, but because the systems they operate in are deteriorating. We've created environments where the optimal survival strategy is to do the least required, rely on policy instead of judgment, avoid unnecessary emotional labor, and protect whatever psychological bandwidth remains. The tragedy isn't that standards are falling. The tragedy is that we've built the systems this way. If we want excellence back, in medicine, customer service, leadership, education, governance, we need to re-engineer the conditions that make excellence possible. That means reducing administrative noise, restoring ownership, rewarding craftsmanship, paying for cognitive labor, eliminating redundant oversight, designing workflows that respect human limits, and realigning incentives to reward outcomes instead of performance theater. The standard isn't falling because people don't care. It's falling because the systems we operate in no longer deserve the level of care we're capable of giving.